How did you cheat school? I was in summer school one year because I was lazy and never did any work during the year. The entire summer school was on a computer and was estimated to take 3-4 weeks. 4 hours a day. 5 days a week. So after about an hour of doing the computer program, I notice you can skip the section you're on and take a shot at the test, and if you pass the test you pass the section. The test had 10 questions and you could try 3 times before you were required to read the section. I tried the test twice and realized it didn't have a large pool of questions to choose from and would repeat some questions when you retook the test, but the best part was it would tell you what the answer was if you got something wrong. Bingo. I learned that if you took the test twice you were guaranteed to have at least 8 of the answers, which would give you an 80% passing grade on the test. I passed summer school in less than 8 hours and no teacher raised a red flag, and I got to enjoy my summer. I cheated the system. 10/10 would do again. We did our homework as a group where everyone did what they were good at. My friend did algebra and geometry. I did chemistry, biology, Russian and English. Other kids did physics, geography, history, and so on. We cannot choose classes in Russia. We have to study everything in full measure. So in high school there is sometimes too much homework each day for one person to do it all and still have some time to live. So we've been sharing the burden for about 3 years. Never got caught. Surprisingly. Back in high school I would do the old data file switcheroo. Basically change MP3 to doc on any song file I named after the assignment. So Barbie Girl MP3 would become essay doc. The essay would show as corrupted when the teacher tried to open it. This stalled me an extra day to complete the assignment. It was part of my emergency toolbox. I went to a poor Catholic school. In 8th grade every classroom got a computer, which was a big deal. The only issue was no one knew how to set them up. I said I did. I didn't, but I wore glasses and liked video games and Star Wars enough that they believed me. Teaching myself as I went. I set up AlbGhe computers in the school and became the official IT department of the school. Anytime there was an issue I got called out of class. Score. I then realized that there was a simple setting that stopped some programs from running. I forget now, but it had something to do with color. I figured out that I could fix the problem by changing that setting. But I could also set it to restore to the previous setting in 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks the computer would break again. With a computer in every classroom all on different reset schedules. I got called out to fix a computer most days. I maintained a good relationship with teachers. Having your teacher like you will help in many ways. Not me, but rather someone I went to high school with. The student in question wore a hijab because of her Muslim faith. Well, on test days in our maths classes, she would download an MP3 track with maths formulas she had recorded onto her iPod, put on her earbuds and cover them up with her hijab, take the test, and then ace it. I only knew about this because I accidentally walked in on her in the bathroom putting in her earbuds. But I didn't tell the teacher because I thought her method of cheating on tests was ducking brilliant. Yeah, I was too honorable for my own good back then. Edit. There were a couple of things I wanted to change. And just for clarification. Yes, I know maths is a British term. I'm American but am a huge Anglophile who has been using British terms and slang since she was 8. Not really a cheat. But I found using Google's speech-to-text function to be a lifesaver. I could sit down with all my reference materials, speak for 4-5 minutes, define my thesis and end up with a relatively normal 7-8 page essay. When you're about to lose 10 points for a paper being late and can sacrifice a bit of organization and a bit of quality, let Google write for you. I used the fact that I had early acceptance to art school as ammo to convince my guidance counselor I didn't need any more math classes. I didn't realize at the time going to art school meant I'd be working in retail and should have used all the practice I could get. Edited for grammar I clearly didn't learn either. I applied to college as a high school junior. Was accepted. Got my scholarships. Dropped out of high school. Senior year of high school we had to write a research paper. Spent almost all year on it. Was supposed to be like 10 pages or something. I goofed off and said duck it. Time comes to turn it in and I turn in one of those clear folder things with just a cover sheet in it. A week later the teacher comes to me and tells me she lost my paper and needs me to reprint it and bring it in tomorrow. I tell her no problem and go home. Next day I come in and tell her that it had been written on my mom's computer, only computer in the house, and that my mom had already deleted it. Sounded really sad and asked what I was supposed to do now. I couldn't write a new report that quick. I had spent all year on it. She says she will take my average from the other assignments we had done and that would be my grade for the paper. Walked away with a 93% on the paper. I used a smartwatch in my exams. Damn. You must have some pretty oblivious teachers for that. Due to health reasons I was homeschooled for 1 year in high school. Their version of homeschooling? One of the sports coaches would stop by once a week to deliver me schoolwork and administer tests. Except he was busy. You know. Coaching. The first month or so he'd show. But eventually he just stopped. Near the end of the semester he asked me what grade I thought I deserved. I did literally none of the work assigned. I said A. He was like sure. But he put down a C for math since he knew I was bad at it so it seemed real. I was okay with that since I did nothing. I think he took pity on me in retrospect due to said medical issues. But that was the year I realized how much of a joke school was. I put in as little effort as necessary when I went back. Writing papers I just used Google Scholar to find similar papers. Then reword what they wrote and copied their sources. We paid a smart kid in first period to copy all of his answers on the history test. He was a trusted office helper and had access to the copy machine. He would give them to us at lunch. We would just randomly change a few answers so it wasn't obvious. Made an A that semester without learning a single thing. I had one better. My history teacher would do the whole take one pass the rest. I was the last guy. I would give the teacher the leftover tests. What she didn't know is that I took an extra exam. The second exam I would sell it to the guys in the other period. I used to show up to the school about 20 minutes after class had already started and go to the main office to get a late slip. They'd give me my slip and keep a carbon copy. I wouldn't go to class and when the attendants got to the office they would mark me late, not absent. Never failed. I didn't really try and I got straight A's. Did this through high school. Then hit college. Law. So true. Got high 80s low 90s all through high school without studying for 4 years, except for 2 completely memory based tests, and then shat myself in university. In high school, I'm in college now. I have never cheated in college and never will. It's never worth it. In Spanish class we were given 20 words to memorize weekly and had to spell them correctly on every test. I wrote every word on a small piece of ripped paper and half covered it with my thigh. When the teacher walked by I would close my legs, hiding it. Always looking directly down for the entire test facing the desk. I could look at the test and the paper without moving my head. I remember telling a couple people about it and it worked flawlessly for them too. Also, I always made sure I purposely misspelled 1-2 words every now and then because that's obvious as duck if I got 100% on every test. This way, if the teacher called me out or asked me something and I didn't know the words at all that would raise red flags. I made damn sure I always got as though. Easy. Every Friday I had a history test third period. Every Friday I had English first period. And it was a free reading. Just sit anywhere. Type of thing. The wall between those classes was a thin, temporary, kind of fold up wall. So I would sit against this temporary wall and read and listen. And when I heard the history teacher loudly proclaim, "Time's up. Pass your tests forward," I would pull out a piece of paper and a pencil. You see, this history teacher wasn't going to grade the tests himself. He had us grade each other's exams by shuffling them and passing them back out. And then reading the answers out loud. so everyone could grade some other person's test they had just been handed. So I sat in English class and got every answer to the test first period. Second period I would memorize the list by reading it in between sections of taking notes, or whenever there was some downtime. Third period comes along. I don't need a cheat sheet. I don't even need to hear the questions. And honestly, I don't feel bad about it. Had he just graded the 10-question quiz himself, I would have had to study. I realized I had forgotten to do my required community service, 20 hours I think, just a couple days before the report was due, and so I asked a girl to sign off on hours at the nursing home she worked at. I had another friend read over the essay I wrote about the experience for any plot holes, and at the end she looked at me and said, "Okay. You win the Golden Shovel Award." That was the best bullshit I've ever seen in my life. For the record, I ended up doing community service at a nursing home later. Just to do it. I'm not anti-community service. I just wasn't very good at managing long deadlines on projects like that. Had a professor in college that used the same tests every year and had for several years. All the people who were in fraternities and sororities would have a test from the previous year on file and would pretty much just memorize that. Some would also bring it to class since he usually would leave the room after passing the test out. There were so many people that would only show up to class on test days, and they all passed easily. I had a bottle of water. Ripped off the label. Reprinted the front so it looked genuine. At the back of the sticker where the Made in China etc part is, I had all the formulas for my final maths exam. Looked legit. I still failed. I was a know-it-all. And third grade me disliked the fact that the teacher wouldn't call on me despite how vigorously I raised my hand. So I would take out a babysitter's club book, put it on my lap, and pretend to be engrossed in my reading. Never failed, Mrs. Carol would call on me thinking that I wasn't paying attention, and boom, I'd shoot back with the right answer. So gratifying. When I was a senior in high school, I took Spanish 1. I had already taken German I and had the same teacher for Spanish. One day, about a week before finals, she brought in and left on her desk copies of the final. During this time, she was also showing a movie to the class, Das Boot, and was distracted at one point. And I don't remember when. I snagged a copy of the final. I took it home, filled it out, and only gave myself a C because it was all I really deserved. The day of the test, I brought a copy with me in my book bag. Sometime during the final, I switched the one I had with a copy I'd filled out and just drew doodles for the entirety of the test. I got a C. A few years ago in college, I was taking a Spanish class, and on one of our test days, it was an online test and the professor wanted us to take it in the computer lab. So we go to the lab. She tells us what website to go to, and I pull it up in Google Chrome. Chrome recognizes that there is text on the page in Spanish and asks if I would like it to be translated into English. Yes. Google. Yes, I would. And that's how I cheated without even really trying to.